For weeks now, Johannesburg residents have faced on and off water cuts as the city's storage systems fail to meet demand. The Department of Water and Sanitation says one solution could be to make Johannesburg Water an independent service provider. The DG, Dr Sean Phillips, says the city's water problems are linked to how Johannesburg Water is funded. So let's find out how this could all work with DG Sean Phillips. Sean, good morning. Welcome to the program. Thanks as always. Just give us at the beginning just an explanation of why this has been put as a viable solution on the table.
Good morning, Iman. Good morning to your viewers. Johannesburg Water is already a municipal entity in the city of Johannesburg. It's fully owned by the city of Johannesburg. But it's not a fully ring-fenced entity. The entity, Joburg Water, gets a budget every year from the city, but that budget isn't directly linked to the revenue collected from the sale of water. The city sometimes decides to use some of that revenue for other purposes. So we think that it's very important, firstly, for the revenue from the sale of water to be ring-fenced for the water function. That will provide a very important incentive for the board and the management of Joburg Water to manage the entity in such a way that revenue is optimized. For example, by making sure that all the meters are working properly and that the billing and revenue collection system is very efficient. And then secondly, we think that it should also be ring-fenced to the extent that it's able to use its assets and its revenue streams to borrow money. We don't actually have a shortage of money in South Africa. There is lots of money in the pension funds and in the banks, which those banks and pension funds would very much like to invest that money in public services such as water supply, because they're a very good, safe investment for investors such as pension funds.
Yeah.
But Joburg Water currently isn't able to borrow. All the borrowing is done from the city. So if the city has financial difficulties, as it is currently, then it's very difficult for Joburg Water to raise the finance that it needs to raise to invest in all the infrastructure upgrades that need to happen in order for the water supply problems in Joburg to be resolved.
I think those are really interesting arguments that you lay out, because as you said at the very beginning, the city is dipping its hands into the revenue that comes from water, so they're not getting the benefit of that revenue to do all the work that they need to do, particularly maintenance work. The Deputy Minister says Joburg faces an infrastructure investment shortfall of over 3 billion rand every single year. So how would they then, I mean, I know you talked about looking at other funding options, but how would they close the gap and attract that new investment and do it in a way that doesn't have a tariff increase implication for the purchasing of water by ordinary residents in the city?
Well, a big part of the problem is that non-revenue water in Johannesburg is currently close to 50%. In other words, the city doesn't get revenue for almost half of the water that it has to buy from Rand Water. So it's effectively running the water function at a loss. If that problem could be addressed and non-revenue water could be brought under 20%, then that would result in a huge additional revenue for Joburg Water. And if Joburg Water was properly ring-fenced and was able to borrow money on the basis of those revenue streams, it would have sufficient revenue to be able to borrow a lot more money. The non-revenue water is caused by several factors. There are high leaks in the Johannesburg water distribution system, and that's partly due to the fact that the infrastructure is old. Some of the very old pipes need to be replaced, which requires a lot of money, which is one of the things that money could be borrowed for. They need to put in additional pressure-reducing valves, and they need to improve the speed with which their maintenance teams go and fix leaks when they appear. But the non-revenue water is also due to other factors, for example, weaknesses in the billing and revenue collection system. So if all of those factors could be addressed and the non-revenue water could be brought down, then Joburg Water would have a lot more revenue to use for maintenance, but also be in a much better position to raise money in the financial markets for the required capital works.
So what would be the order then, Sean? Because as you say, I mean, we're in this sick cycle of water losses for which we can't get money, and a large, a part of that is because of leaks. I think, the amount of leaks, water that's usable, 50% of that, from what I understand, based on the numbers, is basically lost in the ground. It can never be used nor paid for. So what is the order of things? Would you create an entity, ring fence the revenue that would come in? So there would need to be some legal move, I guess, for that to happen. Then you would go and get money, and then you would fix up all of the infrastructure problems, the leaks and so on, and the pressure issues, resolve all of those. Then you have a fixed system, and then you would be able to get back a lot more money for what you're putting out. How would this all work out logistically?
In mind, there's no need to create a new entity. Joburg Water already exists. The arrangements between Joburg Water and the city just need to change so that Joburg Water has control over its billing and revenue collection and all its other functions, and eventually over time so that Joburg Water is able to borrow on the strength of its assets and revenue streams. In the meantime, Joburg Water is trying hard to address the situation in the current arrangements. So as I indicated earlier, Joburg Water is currently getting a budget from the city and has a number of capital projects, more than 50 capital projects underway, and is doing its maintenance in the meantime. So that work will carry on, and Joburg Water as an entity will still be there. But what we're arguing for is that and by the way, the city has to make this decision. We can't make the decision on behalf of the city. Local government is a separate sphere of government with its own elected representatives. So the city of Joburg has to make the decision that we're recommending that Joburg Water should become a properly ring-fenced entity with the ability to borrow on its own. But no new entity needs to be created. The current work that's happening needs to proceed. But if and when these changes are agreed to by the Council of the City of Johannesburg, then you should start seeing water service delivery in Johannesburg improve. The situation is currently very difficult because the city is in a difficult financial situation. And these more than 50 capital projects that I talked about are in a situation where they're stop and go because the city is not transferring sufficient funds into Joburg Water's account to enable Joburg Water to pay all of these contractors that are on site. So some of the contracts have stopped and some of the contractors have left site because they haven't been paid.
Yeah. It sounds like, Sean, and I will come to service delivery because there's a protest underway, water-related as well as we speak, but it sounds like, from what you're saying and what we see in terms of the dysfunction, if you're a resident here in the city of Johannesburg, and we certainly are, that the city's finances are just in a mess if they, and it sounds like they're operating out of desperation. Wherever there's money coming in, let's just use that money, but they're not fundamentally tidying up, neatening up, tightening up the system, making sure there's good governance and oversight.
Yes, Aman, you will have to direct questions as to why the city is having these financial difficulties to the city. I don't know what the reasons are for the financial difficulties. What I do know, because we work closely with Joburg Water, is that it is having a devastating impact on Joburg Water's ability to address the crises in Johannesburg now.
So we've got many communities, across Soweto. This morning we're in Ebony Park. Our reporters there, they're protesting, amongst other things, provision of water. And we've seen rolling water cuts as well in Johannesburg. How soon can residents, Sean, expect to see more stable water supply under a model such as the one we're discussing this morning? And what quick wins could we see?
Well, it will take time for the city to council, if they do decide to make these changes we're recommending, to implement them. The city is a very large, complex organization, and changes such as this would have far-reaching implications, so they have to be properly and carefully planned and implemented to avoid unintended consequences. But there are things that can and should be done in the short term by all of us, not just by Joburg Water. Joburg Water, even though it's got these financial difficulties, is still implementing its improvement plans. It's doing various things like taking actions to improve its operations so that it improves its turnaround times for fixing leaks. But over and above that, there's an underlying problem in Gauteng that demand is exceeding the supply of water available from the integrated Vaal River system. We are halfway through building the new Polihali Dam in Lesotho to enable more water to be transferred from the Lesotho highlands into the integrated Vaal River system. And once that's completed in a few years' time, then Rand Water will be able to abstract more water from the integrated Vaal River system and treat it and provide more water to the municipalities in Gauteng. In the meantime, it's very important that we moderate demand for water in Gauteng so that we don't have these situations that happen when, especially during heat waves, when demand exceeds supply and then the reservoirs, both of the city and Rand Water, run low. That results in supply problems, particularly in high-lying areas of the city. If we can just reduce the average demand in Gauteng by 8%, then that would have a huge impact on the ability of the system to keep providing water continuously. That means that all of us need to, I know it's difficult to say this when people aren't getting water often, but those people who are getting water, if they can use water sparingly, both households and industries in Gauteng, and if we can just reduce the average consumption by 8%, then that itself will result in a large reduction in the amount of water supply disruptions.
Yeah, it always seems like with those calls, Sean, there needs to be a stick involved because, people don't. You'd see people watering their gardens, even in times where there are water restrictions and things like that. So, leaving it alone to the goodwill or to the good sense and the sense of morality around water, I'm not sure how well that works. I want to just share with you a poll that we are putting out to our viewers today. And the question is, how would you describe the water supply in your area? 45% of those who responded, Sean, said it is unpredictable. And 16% are saying they simply have no water at all. And in a lot of communities, this has been for months now. In Ebony Park, they've been having a problem since January. Only 27% of people that we have polled are saying water is stable and reliable. And this would obviously be countrywide, Sean, so it's not just from the Gauteng region. What do you make of these stats? Let me just share it with you again. Only 26% say it's stable and reliable. 44% are saying it's unpredictable. And 17% are saying they simply have no water at all.
Yes, there are problems in many areas of the country. As you know, in terms of the Constitution, municipalities are responsible for water distribution. And we do blue, green and no drop assessments reports of all the municipalities which are water services authorities, of all their drinking water and wastewater systems. And our assessment reports indicate that the performance of the municipal systems has deteriorated quite sharply. So we have a general problem with the performance of municipalities with regard to the water supply function. We're providing municipalities with a lot of support in many ways, including in the non-metropolitan municipality areas grants to assist them to put in place capital works to address the situation. But there are similar problems to Johannesburg in many of the municipalities where there's very high levels of non-revenue water and also where the municipal councils are not ring fencing revenue from the sale of water for the water function, and that revenue is being used elsewhere. So this kind of institutional problem that I talked about in Johannesburg is common across the country, where the water money from the sale of water is not dedicated to the water function, coupled with very high non-revenue water, results in a situation where the maintenance and operation of water services in municipalities is neglected. And this has been the situation for decades. And in many areas of the country, there is sufficient raw water, but there's sufficient treated water being provided by water boards, But the problem is the distribution system in the municipalities, which will have very high levels of
Yeah.
leaks, or which is not being operated properly because of these underlying institutional problems.
Given everything that you've said and the history about this, it's a systemic and institutional problem now. It doesn't look like we're on top of things, Sean.
Well, there are processes in place to bring about reforms. We have just gotten Cabinet approval to submit a Water Services Amendment Bill to Parliament, which will be served in Parliament soon, which is aimed at addressing these institutional and governance challenges that I've been talking about and ensuring that water services authorities, which are the municipalities which have the function, only appoint capable water service providers. The water service provider is the body which delivers the function, which can be the municipality itself or an entity like Joburg Water, and will also require such water service providers to have all responsibility for all the functions related to supplying the functions, such as billing and revenue collection, and requires to move towards ring fencing of that revenue.